Welcome everyone, this is Mindy Eggen. In today's video, we are going to be coloring our die cuts using some ink blending. This will give a nice three-dimensional look to our basket of strawberries using the Fawn strawberry patch. Here's a look at the dies and the cardstock that I die cut it from. I am using the strawberry patch dies, and I die cut my strawberries from Ballet slippers cardstock and the leaves and the top for the strawberries from Cilantro cardstock. Then I also have the back piece to our strawberries, which is the solid die, and I die cut that from some sticky note cardstock. I Googled strawberries. I know what strawberries look like, but I kind of wanted to see how they looked in the pictures, and there was quite a variety, and I went with the yellow backing for my seeds. I die cut a ton of these off screen, and I will do most of them in my video. I don't show them all, but I do color them all up, and anything extra I have, I just kind of throw into a little plastic bag and save for another project. I'm starting off by ink blending my strawberries, and I think it's always best to start with a color of cardstock, especially with the strawberries that I die cut from the Ballet slippers, so it's a really nice light pink. And I'm ink blending on Lobster ink, heavy on one side, light-handed on the other. I'm also working on a silicone mat, which is great for this because these are kind of small and a little hard to get your finger on there and ink blend. And the silicone mat kind of helps hold them in place a little bit. And using the blending brush, because of the bristles, they just kind of glide right onto the cardstock and just makes it really easy. So I will continue that process through all of my strawberries to give them some color. I wanted to add a little bit more contrast to my strawberries, which you could add more of that lobster ink, but I thought it would just be easier to grab my cranberry ink and just carefully ink blend the one edge. Now, if you don't have cranberry, you could also use gray or even a brown will help kind of darken that edge a little bit so that I have a really dark on one side and it gets light going off to the other side to kind of give more of that shine or highlight look to my strawberries. I also wanted to give you a quick look at how I clean my silicone mat. So I have a little spray bottle here that I think I just picked up in a cosmetic section, and I have it filled with isopropyl alcohol, rubbing alcohol. I have it filled with rubbing alcohol, and I just spray that onto my mat and then wipe that up with a paper towel or even using a baby wipe. Now, sometimes reds, depending on the inks, could stain the silicone mat, which is fine. You can obviously still use your mat, but I always have a bottle of that handy, and I use that to clean most of my surfaces. Now I'm moving on to the leaves and the tops of my strawberries, and I had started off with Noble Fir, which is actually what I did in my original card, but in between now and then, I received the Rainforest ink, and wow, I love the Rainforest ink on Cilantro cardstock, so I will probably always use that. So I just ink blended one side of each of the leaves and maybe the top or the bottom of the tops for the strawberries, just to kind of also give that little bit of a highlight area. This is the fruit basket die that I die cut from Kraft cardstock. It also looks really nice in white. I went with Kraft, and I'm going to just lightly ink blend on, I think this is Crunchy Leaf ink, only going part way up so it's darker towards the bottom and gets lighter as it gets towards the top of the basket. Now this you do have to be a little careful with because it is kind of fine die cut lines in there with the openings of the basket. Here I have the Henry's ABCs to spell out the word berry, and that is also die cut from the Ballet Slippers cardstock. Now I'm just using whatever leftover ink I have on my brush, and I'm blending going from the bottom of the letter towards the top, but getting lighter handed as I get towards the top. So it's going to have that ombre look to it. I love being able to customize my message on the front of the card, especially when I have something that is just completely die cuts. I think just being able to customize it really adds some more interest to the card. Then I can move on to putting my strawberries together. So at first I started off by adding tape runner to the back of the strawberries and then lining it up and attaching it to that piece I die cut from the sticky note cardstock. But after a while, I just felt like I had a better hold using the liquid glue, so I will end up switching to that. Plus, I'm also using that liquid glue to attach the tops of my strawberries because I only wanted adhesive kind of where it's going to attach. I didn't want it on the stem, and I just figured it was easier to just use one adhesive versus switching between the two. So I'm adding just lines and dots of that liquid glue to the back of the strawberries, and that also gives me a little bit of wiggle room as I attach these. So I'll continue doing that for each of the strawberries, and I'm also working on just a scratch piece of paper here, something that either on the back there was notes or ink blending or just anything like that, something scratched that you're not worried about. And to me, that just helps keep my surface a little more clean because I work on a glass surface here, and then I don't have to worry about cleaning up any excess glue that might have seeped out. These flowers come from the stitched strawberry frame. I just thought they would be a really nice addition to my basket of strawberries. So they're die cut from white cardstock, and then I have yellow centers where I'm just adding a dot of glue, picking it up with my embellishment wand, and then just putting that right down in the center of my flowers. I had also gone ahead off screen and die cut each of my letters 2 more times out of the Ballet Slippers cardstock to spell out the word berry. That's totally optional, but I really love adding dimension. I think it helps separate your sentiment from the background a little bit, especially if you have a busy background or, if you did ink blending or pattern paper. I think it just helps the eye separate that a little bit more. So I'm just layering these together with my liquid glue and embellishment wand. For the front of my card, I took a piece of paper out of the Flower Market paper pack and I cut it to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I am adding this stitched scallop frame that I die cut from white cardstock, and I'm just going to attach that to the front of this piece of paper with my liquid glue. Normally, I would probably die cut it a few more times to layer it up, but with my strawberries and the fruit basket, I think I'm going to have quite a few layers on here, and I didn't want this to get too much more bulky than it's already going to be. So once I have that lined up really well around the edge of my card, I'll just push down a little bit to adhere that and make sure I didn't have any excess glue. To attach my strawberries to my fruit basket, I am going to put some tape runner behind the fruit basket. This is just going to kind of temporarily hold my strawberries in place so I can get a pretty good placement of them. So I can grab my strawberries and just start tucking them in. And this also allows me to maybe I need to pop one up a little bit to tuck the strawberry in the front, and then I'm going to layer a bunch of them behind that. Now I'm okay if there's a little bit that is hanging out because I will trim that later. And as I'm doing this, I'm going to kind of flip it over, add a little bit of liquid glue or tape runner to some of those pieces so that I can layer the strawberry behind it. So it looks like a really full basket of strawberries. So here I kind of come in with that liquid glue and add a little bit to that part of the basket that's attached to the strawberries just to help reinforce that a little bit. Then when I'm happy with the placement of my strawberries in my basket, I'll just turn it over and trim off any of that excess that's hanging off of the side. Now I can work on actually assembling everything onto the front of the card. I wanted to pop this up, especially since my strawberries are all of different heights in the back there because I layered them. So I started with a couple foam squares on the back, and that wasn't really making it even across the whole thing. So I added another layer. There's a lot of foam squares. Another layer to those top strawberries. And then I have thin foam squares. So there's 2 thicknesses. So the bottom strawberries get the thin ones. And then I felt really good about that. That was pretty flush across it. Now I'm going to use my basket of strawberries as a placeholder to figure out where I want to put all of these leaves. I love this cluster of leaves. And once I know where I want everything to go, I'm going to take that tape runner, add it to the back of them, and then just start placing it. I don't push down too hard until I know for sure that this is where they want to be or where I want them to be. Now some of the leaves, just to make sure that they're stuck down really well, because sometimes if my ink is still wet on the leaves, it doesn't want to stick very well. So I'll just kind of pull those up a little bit and add some liquid glue behind that. And then I know for sure that that will stick down really well. Once I have my cluster of leaves in the background there ready to go, I will start working on putting my basket of strawberries on the front of the card. So I'll just remove the backing on the foam squares and then attach that. And I'm just kind of hovering over where I want the basket of strawberries to be because I want to make sure they're pretty centered between my frame. I also had saved an extra strawberry off screen that I put 1 foam square on the right hand side of it, just so that it's going to be kind of flush with my basket of strawberries. And I just thought that was really super cute to have this little kind of loner strawberry hanging out on the front of the basket. Now, anything that is overhanging off the edge of my card, I will just flip over and trim that off with my scissors. And then I'm going to put my flowers on the front of the card. So I really liked these addition of these little flowers. I'm sure there's tons of Lawn Fawn sets or other die sets that have little flowers that you could add. And I think it just helps kind of break up all of this color. We have a lot of red, green, and pink going on. And I'm kind of placing them like I would an embellishment. I'm doing it in threes. And I'm trying not to go in a straight line. I kind of want them scattered in those leaves. Then to attach my die cut word berry, I'm going to line it up with the lines on my grid mat surface. Once I have that all completely straight and lined up, I'm going to take a piece of removable tape. So it kind of looks like Scotch tape. I have no idea if it's the same thing. My box said removable tape, but washi tape would work too. My main thing is that I want to be able to see through it so I can line this up on the top. So I added a little dots of the liquid glue behind the letters, and then I can pick it up with the ends of the tape. And once I feel that that is pretty centered, I can push down on that a little bit. Now, I just need to be really careful when removing it. Now, I've never had anything rip on me, but my letters do tend to pull off if I didn't let that liquid glue attach to the cardstock. So I will just carefully peel this up, kind of hold the letters as I go. One of them wanted to pop up, but I was able to just push that back down into place. And then I'm going to put a block on top and just let that sit there for a few minutes while I work on my smaller sentiment. This comes from the Berry Special stamp set, and I lined it up on some black cardstock. I'm going to prep that with my anti-static powder tool and ink it up with the Lawn Fawn Yeti ink, which is a white pigment ink, and my favorite way to do white heat embossing. When I stamp down, I'm just barely touching it. Because I'm using the Misty, I know I can stamp this again. I really don't want to push too hard because I don't want to, for one, transfer too much ink and have it kind of squish out, and I don't want to squish my letters. So just gently tapping that to push down, and then I can sprinkle on my white embossing powder, kind of let it sit flat for a moment, holding my cardstock, tap it, and then sprinkle the excess back into my container. Then once my heat tool is nice and warmed up, I can come in and melt all of that embossing powder. I'm going to trim this down with one of my sentiment banner dies, just holding that in place with some Post-it tape and die cutting that out. And I am going to actually trim off those flags. I just really wanted a nice even strip. So I trimmed off the flags with my mini paper trimmer, and then I'm coming in and I'm going to cut this in half. So I'm going to cut it right after the word R. So I will have UR, and then my sentiment will say berry and special. So I just trimmed that little piece right off. The first part of my sentiment, the UR, I lined with black foam squares that'll kind of disguise that there's foam squares behind there because I used the same color that is my cardstock. And I put that a little off kilter, a little crooked at the very top. And my smaller sentiment, the word special, I only have a foam square on the one end, and I'm going to put liquid glue on the other end. The end with the liquid glue is what is going to overlap on my Y at the bottom there. So I can just take that and line it up so it's kind of hanging off of the letter Y. Now, also in between all of this, I had gotten some of the sparkle glaze from Lawn Fawn, which is super pretty and super sparkly, and I really wanted to work it into my card. So I'm just kind of coloring my flowers and the center of my flowers with that sparkle glaze just to add a little bit of shine and sparkle to my card. And that will finish up my card project for today. I hope you enjoyed it and this beautiful basket of strawberries. I absolutely loved creating this card. Thank you so much for joining, and I'll see you again soon.